Claire Curran.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I would like to add my congratulations to your re-election to the august position of in your capacity as Speaker. And I this is my first speech in the House this term, and I'd like to welcome all the new members here as well. And, you know, I note the previous views expressed by my colleagues and the colleagues across the House about the importance of this bill and its status as a kind of bipartisan. There seems to be a lot of agreement around it, which I think is a really good thing, because ultimately it is about consumers and providing more protections for consumers and bringing them up to date. And so I'd like to make a few comments about that and about what some of the implications of that are, particularly with regard to the new technology, or not so new technology, but the encroachment of the online environment in our lives generally, and the importance of bringing legislation up to date across the spectrum, and this is essentially what this piece of legislation is doing. Before I do that, though, I would like to make special mention of where this bill came from, along the lines of my colleague Leanne Dalzell, that this bill has been a long time coming to the House, and it probably should have been brought before the House well before now, and that I would like to make special mention of the previous Minister, John Boscawen, in this area and the work that he did on that. I know that my colleague Leanne Dalzell talked about Heather Roy's contribution, but I would like to acknowledge Mr Boscawen's contribution and his commitment to these issues, and also to the quality of the work that around what underpins this bill, I suppose, around the importance of the wider spectrum of consumer law reform, and also the seriousness with which I know the Commerce Select Committee will take it, and we will be looking at it from a range of different perspectives. And I'm really looking forward to doing that, particularly with regard to the impact of the consumer issues on the online environment and the special challenges that raises. I would also like to make mention, given that the previous speakers talking about the importance of balance and fairness in legislation, and while I absolutely agree with them on that, it did sound as if there was somehow a potential conflict between the importance of protecting consumers and the enabling of innovation to occur and for business to be able to get done. And with regard to this particular bill, I don't agree. I actually think that it's pretty clear that consumers are what drive and good law protecting consumers is what drives good business, and that having a strong and relevant and consumer legislation is important for both consumers and business, but it's good consumer legislation is ultimately good for business, and I think that is the important point to make here, because if you've got good consumer legislation, then you are going to have consumers who are able to make purchases in an environment that they know and trust, and you're going to have good laws around them that are going to deal with the issues that shouldn't be arising, particularly the issues that shouldn't be arising in this day and age, around how people are purchasing more and more online, and how people are purchasing more and more products in environments where they shouldn't be being ripped off. And so if you have so financial literacy is obviously an issue around that, but to my mind we should be coming at this from the perspective of providing those things, putting those things such as financial literacy and protections for consumers in place in order to ensure that consumer confidence will drive more consumer purchasing. And so ultimately that is what I believe lies behind this. So with that frame in mind, that is how I believe that the Select Committee should be looking at this piece of legislation and asking, and when you're talking about principles, I think it should be asking itself in the decisions that we're making, is it going to be good for consumers, then it will be good for business. And I think that's a good starting point to take. And with that in mind, I would like to mention a couple of pieces in the bill around the changes that are proposed, and I'd just like to refer back to which I think was Mr. Todd Macleay's point around the fact that consumer law reform was one of the 120 points of the government's economic plan. I have to say that's the first time I've heard that phrase, and I was wondering to myself what the other 119 were and whether there was a list of them somewhere, because that would be quite good. There is? Good. On the website, 120 points? Good. Well, but I heartily agree that consumer law reform is a very important part of a wider economic plan, and it was good to know that such an economic plan exists, and perhaps the fact that it's got 120 points in it is a reason why people haven't really got their heads around what it actually all means. However, one of those things is around as I said, the changes, closing those loopholes around allowing unscrupulous traders to get away with what their obligations should be, and having a responsible approach to the online environment. And I'd just like to say that, I would expect that the important and emerging new businesses that we have in New Zealand in that online environment, and it would be good if we had more, and perhaps consumer law reform might help drive confidence in that area around more businesses being developed. But taking Trade Me as an example, because it has been used today in the House as an example, that reputable organisations such as them I know already take a responsible view to these things, but the traders that operate through Trade Me don't always, and that having those laws to prevent that kind of behaviour happening is good. And I'd just like to refer to Consumer New Zealand and the work that they've done on this, and them signalling this as a significant issue. At least 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, where they said that they believed that unscrupulous traders were exploiting a legal loophole in online auctions. And I'd just like to make reference to that, because I actually think that's hopefully one of the things that this legislation will address. And just to explain exactly what that means for people, because I no doubt there has been many of us who have gone on to Trade Me and made purchases, that you may not know that you aren't protected under consumer law if you're pressing, if you're clicking on the Buy Me button, you're protected under consumer law. But if you're pressing on the button that is called Starting Bid, then you're not. And that's an issue. I mean, it's a simple issue, and hopefully things like that will be addressed through this legislation that will provide a lot more protection for consumers. So I think that's really important. And while we're talking about the importance of consumer confidence, I would like to just quickly make mention of another issue which isn't directly related to this legislation, but hopefully will be addressed as part of the 120-point economic plan, and that is the protection for consumers who are buying and likely to be buying a lot more of the products and services associated with ultra-fast broadband. And I see that there's a new survey that's just been done about how people are more likely to take up products if they've got high video content attached to them. But the question I have is, how can they be reassured that they're paying a competitive price and for those products and services, and how can they be reassured that they're not going to be ripped off by monopoly pricing? And that's one of the issues that really does need to be addressed, and I hope the government will be looking at that as well.
Jonathan Young.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to stand.